Good night, ladies and gentlemen. I am going to go through paper. This is part 4 of the paper Syncretism, a means and a method for identifying Kemet, and Kemetiu. So now I'm starting here. The next figure to examine is the mace head of King Narmer. This is the mace head here. This is the drawing here. Drawing of the images of the Narmer mace head. The king is seated on a throne, on a something, right? So that's the illustration there. As all artifacts of the first dynasty, ritual is in the forefront. In the center of the actual mace and right column, there's a bull and a cow, or a cow and a calf in a circle. Give me 1 second. In a circle. In a circle. There's a very important, this is very important in that it supports syncretism. The images in the second column also support syncretism as we see the king performing activities in the set festival, such as performing the bull run. Right. So now the next artifact to mention is the bull palette. This is it here. The bull palette is important for it predates the first dynasties, King Narmer, to show that the syncretism of the bull and the king was in effect earlier in the annals of Kemet civilization. The pre-dynastic period shows the birth of these concepts. The bull palette is an excellent example, and we can see this clearly in the figure below. Here's the king again. Here the king again is represented by a bull on the top of each palette, trampling his enemy. The reverse side also has a series of other animals presented on standards. These standards show other cult confederations. In this case, there are hippopotamus, mint thunderbolt, ibis, and hawk falcon. See below section. Not only was the Egyptian king the bull, he was also a herdsman. The following quote from the intellectual adventure of ancient man helps us with understanding. And I quote, "This is perhaps the most fitting picture of the good Egyptian ruler, that he was the herdsman for his people. The functions of the state were to own control, drive discipline, and defend. They were also to cherish, nurture, shelter, and enlarge the population. The God sent controller of the Egyptian people was the herdsman who kept them in green pastures, fought to secure fresh pastures for them, drove off the voracious beasts who attacked them, belar- belabored the cattle who strayed out of fine, and helped along the weaklings. He made the herdsman of this he made me the herdsman of this land, for he discerned that I would keep in order for him. He he entrusted to me that which he protected. End quote. In a time of distress, man looked towards the ideal king of the future. He's a herdsman, and I quote, he is the herdsman of everyone without evil in his heart. His herd may be cut down in numbers, but he will spend the day in caring for them. End quote. Elsewhere, the king is called the goodly herdsman, watchful for all mankind, whom their maker has placed under his supervision. End quote. The sun god, and I quote, appointed him to be shepherd of his land, to keep alive the people and the folk, not sleeping by night as well as by day, and seeking out every beneficial act and looking for possibilities of usefulness. The antiquity of this concept of the king is visible in the fact that a shepherd's crook is one of the earliest insignias of the pharaoh and is the origin of one of the words meaning to rule. That would be Heka. It's called a Heka staff, which I'm sure he will mention later on. Cattle tax and the king. A very important point that shows the syncretism of the king to the cattle is the fact that the king's ruling period is counted in terms of the cattle tax count. Sir Alan Gardner, in his classic book Egypt of the Pharaohs, an introduction, describes in detail the linking of the cattle count with counting the reign of the king in the chapter The Fundamentals and Nature of Egyptian History, the Divine Cow, Hereteru. I have addressed the king as a bull to show syncretism. I have briefly described the divine cow, Heteru, and the wife of the king, Narmer, as a cow in the earlier section to show some syncretism as it pertains to the women and their ritual counterparts. No goddess, no divine quality, no nature was more celebrated and more importantly needed by the people of the Nile than the divine cow Heteru. To, to ultimately rule Kemet, one would have to kill the images of the black herd, the bull, and certainly the creator of the herd, the mother, the divine cow. From pre dynastic to the pyramid text age, her job was to sustain the king and the kingdom. In the Middle Kingdom, her role extended to all people of the land. The following image of Hoetaru shows immediately the syncretism of the cow, divine and human. In Hathor, in the context of the coffin text, the author points out several important roles that Hathor has in the religious text. The term is as follows, and I quote: Hathor faced a very important role as the intercessor in a common man's attainment of eternal life. Within the coffin text, she is already participant in many of the crucial actions that were required for safe passage to eternal life. Just the basic requirements of sacrifice to Hathor indicates she is an important figure and it was necessary to have her approval and protection. Additionally, there was basic praises and specific spells for the purpose of venerating Hathor and gaining her favor that reemerged time and time again. Becoming a scribe of Hathor is also mentioned. The purpose of this position is unclear, other than showing dedication and reverence for the power and influence of a goddess. Scribes were also necessary in temple practice, which was a part of her veneration. In spell 295, Hathor also has the responsibility of maintaining one of the gates that the deceased would pass through in the afterlife. The position of a guardian appears significant in this passage because Hathor also created the gate. Creating an obstacle in the afterlife shows a significant amount of control over the destiny of the deceased. As a result, the deceased would want to please the goddess even more to ensure the protection of a deity. The reliance gives this reliance gives Hathor the position of an intercessor. The combination of these aspects displays that the authors or instigators of the coffin text felt that Hathor had important powers and that these powers should be used to their benefit. Hathor is mother and consort, as with Namor. Heteru has zoological characteristics as well as divine and human characteristics. Syncretism will allow me to show the cow divine and the woman as interchangeable. In the same way, Namor was inseparable from the bull and the people inseparable from the herd. The early great Egyptologists could not at all embrace the ritual, tribal, and very African concept of ancient Egypt. She could be a cow, a goddess, and a woman no different than Kemet can be black cattle. Kemet can be black cattle and black people. The picture above to the left is Heteru as a woman, a divine, and a cow. The transformation of Kemet, the black herd, to the people and the place, as I have said earlier, the name Kemet existed before what people believe is just a place name. For, as I have said, for the Africans of the Nile, Kemet was a name that represented them as a people, uh, or the African cult, or zoomorphic identity as herd. To look at the inter to a mistake would be to look at the intermediate to middle kingdom to search for the meaning of Kemet, and unfortunately the search for Kemet has usually only centered in the period where Kemet becomes a place name. At the same time, Kemet has been stripped of its zoomorphic symbolism, and the Kemet glyph relating to sacred black cattle has been marginalized or stripped away. Right. So we see M. Ur Kemet, observer of the black cattle. Oh, Emi Kemet, observer of the black cattle. This is it here. M. Emi Kemet, observer of the black cattle. Here on this card door in 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 the of Semi, the late Old Kingdom tombs of Naga Edir, you find one of the first clear pictures of an overseer of the sacred black cattle. Here, Kemet is not a place name, but is in use in a time where the whole country, place name, or toponym was not named as the people heard Kemet yet. The principal text says, and I quote, an offering which the king gives, and Anubis, who is upon his mountain, who is in the place of embalming, the funerary offerings go forth to the sole companion of the overseer of the black cattle herd in sight of his lord Anurus. Here, the notion that Kemet suddenly appeared as a place name or toponym out of thin air should be put to rest. There is no need to search for cognates to recreate what Kemet was, and this should put to rest all fanciful notions that Kemet had any connections to a river valley or riparian land. This should also put to rest that Kemet meant black land, or that Kemet name is devoid of color. Here, the Medu nature of Kemet is clear. It means sacred black cattle. All debate should be ended unless scholars can find where there is a determinative to Kemet that denotes some riparian idea or even land grapheme used more widely than cattle. There are arguments about translating the word Kemet, but determinatives or classifiers are important. In this case, the determinative or overwhelming are overwhelmingly connected to cattle. We begin this section with Sma E, an Imi Kemet, overseer of the sacred black cattle. Titles such as this are unusual in this period in the regions where cattle culture exists, particularly in what is called the Thinine territories or Chechenu territories. The first Chechenu Thinine territories were part of the first settlements of ancient Egypt and housed the first capital cities founded by King Narmer. Within the Chechenu tombs, the following appears. We burst up just a little bit so you can see what it says. Right? You have all these different terms here. I'm not too good at the Medu Necher, so I would not attempt to read them, but you can see them here. So I put it on those who can read it, can read it. This one would be Emi Kemet. I'm not sure what this one is. No, this is another Emi Kemet, but I don't want to attempt to read the rest of this. Emi Desheret Mat. I believe that's what it says, but I'm not too good with it, so I don't want to butcher the man's paper. Title 1, Herdsman of the Black Cattle. Title 2, the reference to the Henru undoubtedly refers to the harem of Anuris, shows the cattle also provided offerings for the god harem for their use. Title 5 indicates that red cattle were included in the temple herds as well as black. We have much the same title as the example under here. The title is referring to Kemet, following Egyptian grammar and referring to cattle, not place names or toponyms. The herdsmen are all property of the kingdom and thus are parts of the king. The king is the ultimate herdsman and the head bull of the herd. The following Medu Necher and translation will show the usage of Kemet for cattle who are akin to the Nile Valley African before it is assigned to a place. This translates again to Kemet, the black herd. Diop and Obenga argued that Europeans should be consistent, and if this means black herd, then where the adjective qualifies the determinative, it should apply in all cases. Here, this is easy. We only need to compare Kemet black herd to Kemet black community. Here, herd and community are the same. This is from Papyrus Harris, 49, 4 through 5. Of every house I made them the cows of the herd, all more divine than their black herd. I made the breed even purer than it was originally. I enlarged their boundaries to their accustomed places, which the others have taken for themselves for field. Their boundary stones were set up engraved in thy name. There I protected the black herd of Apis from the stock bulls, which were strayed from the herds, were made for them the decrees for administering them upon earth. So this is Papyrus Harris. Right, you see, this is the section here. I simply added a note that the Apis bull coat was one of the several black bull coats. Stephen Quirky, in his book Exploring Religion in Ancient Egypt, makes this concise. The closest to animal coat in the sense of worship of a living animal would be the extraordinary status of the sacred black bull of Ra at Lunu Ptah. At Menefer and right. Okay. Let me back up. At Menefer and Mont at Armanet, the separateness of the human, only one sacred bull was alive at any time, the next being sought immediately on the death of the old. The exceptional role of these three bulls is reflected in the unique special name for each. Men were for the bull of Ra, Hep, Apis for Ptah, and Beku for Mont. The sacred bull living in a special enclosure as a herd of the god, and at death was buried in a stone sarcophagus like a king or high official. The unexplained and remarkable care for the three bulls did not stop, but nor did it seem to foster the new practice after 700 BC of embalming literally millions of birds and animals for burial in substantial, apparently state-funded catacombs. So I am going to stop here for right now. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Everyone, have a good night.